All right, we are recording, so welcome and thank you for attending the special program Common Access Issues Addressed. This video is used for training purposes only. I want to ensure that everyone understands there are no real students or data portrayed in this video, and any likeness to a real student is purely coincidental. We do not want to violate FERPA in any way, so everything you see today is going to be from a test server sandbox of fake students and fake data that has been generated, again, for training purposes only. So let me come out of my little Google slide and again say welcome. So I'm going to start off here inside of the SIS. So for most people, you understand that there are multiple points of entry when it comes to special programs. Some people have direct entries into there, but most people, I'd say 95% of the people, log in through the actual SIS admin console. And there are some things that can be triggered as far as security permissions from the SIS, and there are some things that can be triggered from special programs. So what I want to do is first go into my flyout window and head into special programs. Now, not everybody is going to have this login that I'm about to use, but there is what we call a super admin password that takes you to kind of the back side of special programs. It is this system admin role. I'm going to log into it so I can be able to show you in breadth everything that you should see or that is available to see within special programs. Somebody, it could be bodies within your district, should have this login. One of the common complaints I'm going to say that we get here about special programs is that it's so much, because it seems to be that in many districts, when we rolled over from sets into special programs, everything just got dumped on the special ed director because that's who was in sets. That's all sets was built for. It was built for special education. It did not include EL and all the 504 and all the kind of stuff like that. Special programs is more robust. It was bought that way purposefully because we wanted to be able to serve more of our special population groups than just special education. Now, do we know that the largest user of special programs is special education? Absolutely, we do. We know that that is it. But depending on how your district has disseminated these rights, somebody has been given access to be the administrator of this entire platform. If it has been made where it's the special education director that's this overall administrator, maybe that was intentional, maybe it was not. Maybe there was not an understanding that this is going to also have to be the person who manages everything for EL, for RTI, for 504, and for gifted. Is that what your district intended to do when they gave these rights over to the special education director? For some districts, that answer is yes. For others, they didn't realize and went, oh, so you mean every time there's something new that happens in EL, my special ed director has to act on it? Yes, if that's who you put in charge of this entire program. So what you have to remember about special programs, there are those 5 modules inside of there. So again, it's IEP, it's gifted, it's RTI, it's 504, and it's EL. Somebody has to manage all of those. Now, you can say, oh, well, let me just put every one of those in as an individual overall super administrator, but you have to be careful with that because they could walk over each other's toes. At some point, the district has to make a decision who is going to manage this platform that is more robust than what we had with sets, okay, as far as what type of data intake this program takes. That person can make the decisions and be the one who watches the updates and watches the flows of new documents. Because when changes are made, certain things do happen in this program, and we're going to detail them out in depth here in a moment. So inside of this program right here, I want to look at administration, and I want to come down here to security. Okay. Now I'm logged in with that administrative password because without it, some of these security groups you do not see. So there were these models that were built out inside of special programs. There were models for each of the 5 modules. So you have models for EL, and these are the 3 that you pretty much see for every one of the different subgroups. You're going to see an administrator, a teacher, and a view only. And I will say that the most common misused group is this view only group of them. I found out when, again, I started the department a year ago. I came from the LEA. When I started up here and started having to have conversations with districts, helping them get their setup correct, one of the things that I noticed is that a lot of districts were using this view only role for teachers. And that is not how this program works. When you give someone view only access, it means they have access to view any student in that location. And so by giving teachers view only, they can actually search for other kids outside of their class rosters and find them. So I know that this to this day still has some cleanup that has to happen inside of districts. But that's what we want to talk about today is if that's not where teachers go, then where do they go? So each one of these groups have security rights within them that you as a district get to dictate what they can and cannot do. In the setup of these, one of the things that was not pushed out with implementation was edit access to profiles, for example. That access was given in the special education groups, but it was not given in any other group. Well, for EL, for example, you have to go in and update the profile to give that status, that EL status each year, because we're not writing it from the IELPs in here. Those are going to be over in elevation. So districts had to go in and purposely turn on that access where they could edit. Same thing for 504. A lot of people are now getting into using the 504 module inside of here so that they can pop a flag on a student and upload even the 504 document if they're using it internally in the district and not the ones that are pre-built inside of here. Well, in order for a user to be able to edit that profile, they have to be given that access. So once these default groups were created, districts could then go in and monitor and adjust any one of the permissions within these groups. So for example, let's take the EL teacher group. Let's say that there are some other things that I in my district, and again, these are district level decisions, need my EL teachers to do. For example, in my district, the EL teachers are going to be the one that changes the status from year to year when they go from a EL1 to a 2 to a non-float to whatever it is that they need to be. So that means I need to edit their properties and permissions to make sure they have access. So editing properties and privileges is where you as a district can go in and say, okay, here is what PowerSchool stood up for us from the beginning. What do we need to tweak because this is how we want our people to do it? Okay. So I can come through here and in each one of these little drop down arrows, you can decide, and here are your options. You can grant and deny in any of these different areas. You just have to expand them. I highly suggest that if you have never done an audit of these permissions group by group, that you go through and look at these. For example, some of the things right here around reports. Do you want this user to be able to create reports, view reports, create or not? Again, grant or deny. If there's something that you're like, no, our users in our district, because we have structure, they do not need these, then you go in here and deny it so that they don't even see that inside of special programs. Not much is going to be done here under system administration from some of the lower levels of security, but the biggest thing is going to be in this area right here, which is the student profiles and documents privileges. This is where it's huge. So out of all of the groups that we're going to go back and look at in those security settings, this is where the audit needs to take place the most. Do you want them to be able to view? When you get into the student level, you're going to have more options. You're going to have location wide and you're going to have system wide. For some districts, you're restricting your permissions down to whatever school your person's at. But you might be at another district where you've got one person who has to work the whole district. And so you're going to want to change what might have originally been pushed out as location wide to system wide. You need to make that choice of which one fits your district and your roles for your people. Some of the things that came out of here, envelopes. Do you want them to be able to send and receive? Now, there is a special group specifically for this, but if you need a whole group within someone to do it and you don't want to put them in another group, you can control this inside of here. If you look at view access, edit access, here, right here, that edit access is the one that did not come turned on out of the box for these viewers. So if you need your EL personnel, your 504, your RTI, your gifted personnel to be able to edit those profiles directly without having to go through a document, has to be turned on. It was not turned on out of the box. So if you have EL teachers that go, hey, I can't go into the profile and change this on a kid, then you need to come here and you need to grant them permission to be able to edit those profiles. And we'll walk through those profiles after a while. Promise we'll get to all of this. You can look at some of the reporting. Now, some of these things are very particular to certain roles, especially in special education. So when it comes to things like viewing child count snapshots and stuff like that, some of those that are only to those certain roles don't need to be chosen over here in the EL section. So make sure you've turned on and off. So like I said, I would highly suggest printing this page out, doing a Control P, and pulling all of these down in each one of the groups to see what have we given access to, what have we not given access to, and turn on and off as needed inside of there. It goes through each one of the profiles, each one of everything inside of here. And I will tell you, 90% of the time, when we release a new document in special programs, there's going to be a profile attached to it. So for example, the latest document that we released was that ACAP testing supports form. With that document, the entries into the documents are going to feed into a profile somewhere. So anytime there is an update where a new document is released, whoever is over your special programs administration is going to have to come in and they're going to have to turn on access to that document. Now, one of the very important ones that you've got to turn it on for is your transfer notification group. I think there's been a misnomer that's been out there about updates breaking the transferring of envelopes. Updates don't break the transfer of envelopes, but they can alter the transfer of envelopes until you act on it. Think about what transferring an envelope means on a kid. It means taking any document that could be attached to a kid and moving it from one district to the other. Once a new document has been released to the wild and is out there in an update, that document becomes transferable. And whether that document is actually attached to a student record or not, until you go in and give that transfer notifications security group access to that new document, you will not be able to move an envelope after that update. And that's something to always keep your eye on. Hopefully everybody on this call receives my Monday newsletter. And yep, they're always full of a lot of information. But if you're the person over special programs, the one thing that you should look at on that newsletter every Monday is that special programs area to see was an update installed over the weekend. And if it was, did it introduce a new document? Because I can promise you, if a new document is released, I'm going to call it out in big, bold lettering in that newsletter. Because until your district acts on that new document, you will not be able to move envelopes across the state at all. It will hang it up very quickly. Someone just asked in chat, can I get placed on that newsletter mailing list? So let me tell you how to get on that because it's a very important one to be on. That mailing list is controlled by the Education Directory. For those of you who do not know, the Education Directory is a live, like, staff position listing that your district maintains for your district employees. Typically, it's the superintendent's secretary. Sometimes it's the principals at the schools that control the Education Directory. Find your person. Ask them to add you as a PowerSchool contact in the Education Directory. And if you are not receiving my Monday emails, you will begin to receive them. They come out every Monday, unless Monday's a holiday, then they come out on Tuesdays. But that is going to be where you're going to find firsthand when a new document is out there, because whoever's been placed in charge of special programs will have to act on it. So this is how you turn those on and off. What can they do as far as students? What can they do as far as, can these people work with staff or not? Some people have even taken certain roles that PowerSchool pushed out natively, and they've made copies of them and made slight adjustments because you had like in between groups. I've seen it a lot with special education. All right, I want to go back. I'm going to cancel this editing, and I want to go back. Actually, let me go this way because I want to get back to this list right here. So again, we have our 5 modules: EL, gifted, RTI, 504, and special education. And you'll notice every one of these have the same three over again: administrator, teacher, view only. Let me collapse. Same thing in RTI: administrator, teacher, view only. 504, administrator, teacher, view only. Special education. Okay, you kind of get this related service one that you're only going to see inside of your special admin password. This is one that's been created. And notice here's an example of another one that I created where I did some escalated permissions inside of it. I had some users that I wanted to be kind of a little higher than what I gave normal special ed teachers, but I didn't want them to be special ed administrators, because I've seen it before where you want certain special ed teachers to maybe be able to administer a caseload change, but not to have complete authority to do everything administratively inside of special education. So you can make tiered positions in between here beyond the ones that PowerSchool gave us. We'll come back to that. Here is one that I really want to talk about, because I think this is the most missed group. And again, unless you are logged in with the super secret admin password, you're not even going to see this one right here. It is very hidden. So there are 3 groups, emails that myself and the SES team here at the state receive. My teachers can't see anything in special programs. They can't see the IEPs like they're supposed to. My counselors can't see the IEPs or the 504 documents or whatever it is that they're supposed to. My principals can't see special education students like they're supposed to. If you are having those kind of complaints in your district, then these 2 groups have not been set up for you. There are 2 groups that are going to call the catch-alls, okay, that have to be put together. Now, these came configured but not connected in the rollout of SIS. So what do I mean by they came configured but not connected? So currently, these 5 modules, EL, gifted, RTI, 504, and special education, the security rights can actually be assigned from over in the SIS. So I'm going to pop back here in the SIS for a second and pull myself up and show you what I mean. Oh, would help if I go to staff. So inside of security, when you look at a user's security, there are these things called roles, okay? For those 5, these 5 right here, they have a corresponding role that can be added. So let's pretend I'm a special education teacher at this school right here. I can actually give special education, see these same mappings? Here's 504 admin teacher viewer, EL admin teacher viewer, gifted admin teacher viewer, RTI, special education. Those same roles are the same groups that I saw over there. I can give special education teacher rights straight from the SIS, because inside of the setup of these roles, so watch me come over here into special education and go to special education teacher. Remember how I went to edit properties and privileges a minute ago? Up here at the top, there has been a role right here, PowerSchool SIS user access role, and it's mapped to special education teacher. This is how it came set up. If you as a district don't want to use this method, you don't have to. There are 2 ways you can manage your users in special programs. You can either manage it through the SIS and connect it over into special programs, or you can say, forget it, I don't want to do this mapping, I don't want to have to wait on somebody to put them in the SIS. You can disconnect this by simply deleting that out. If you delete that role out, what it means is at that point, all of your people will need to be managed inside of special programs. A lot of people used to do it that way in sets, where you would create the users and maintain their rights all within sets. You didn't do anything over an iNow with them. That can be done here as well. I know a lot of smaller districts who have smaller personnel, smaller numbers of personnel, have elected to stop the syncing back and forth from SIS to special programs simply by removing that user access role mapping. But as long as this access role mapping is in place, then the only way to get a person in the security group and keep them in the security group is to have this role attached to them. I've seen so many times districts will come in here. Let me cancel out of this. When you're in a security group, so again, I'm a special education teacher. Up here is properties and privileges, and over here is members. This shows you who is in this group and who has these rights. There's an add and remove members block right here. And you can sit here and you can click add and you can click remove all day long. But if this properties and privileges is mapped to a role, it doesn't matter what you do in special programs, it's not going to hold because what's over in SIS is going to drive it. So the next time it syncs, anybody that you took out is going to get put right back in. Okay. Same thing. If you tried to come over in here and click inside of members and click add members and I add somebody in here, if I do not have them in that SIS role over on the other side, then when it syncs, it's going to take them right back out. So how many of you have been fighting back and forth with adding people in here and the next day they're gone? It's because of that mapping. If you really want to control them within this screen, then you need to remove the mapping from SIS. Or you need to say, we're going to leave the mapping in there and we make sure we control every bit of that security by making sure there's a role over here in this area. Y'all need to get together as a district and decide which way do you want that to go. Now, with that role mapping in mind, let's go back. See, I can move for my groups here as well. I want you to look at these three right here, this building level staff, and let's look at classroom teacher. When it came to classroom teacher, there was not a role mapped out of the box. Some districts have figured that out and they went in and said, oh, well, there's actually a teacher role that can be assigned over here. Watch this. If I go over to Carver and then look at here, there is a teacher role right here, but it's not been mapped here. If you would like to control that security from the SIS, then you would need to come over here and say, I need that to be mapped. And so now everybody in the SIS that has that role assigned will magically appear inside of this group over here. And you hit accept. That will get them syncing. Same thing happened with this other group of principals, counselors, and staff. Now, again, this one was not mapped to an access role. You would need to create a role over in the SIS if you wanted to map it. There's a principal role, there is a counselor role over there, but do you want to use that on everybody? You can only pick one to map this to. A lot of districts have elected to not even map this one and just come over here and add members manually, especially in smaller districts. Because I can come over here and go, oh, well, I got a new principal at XYZ school. I can just come over here to add members. I can look them up. And then I can decide who do I need to add. And I can mass add people at one time. I will tell you personally, when I ran this for the district that I came from, one of the things that I did in this group was to go in and hit add members because we elected to just keep this manually done inside of special programs. You can use the percent symbol as a wildcard search. Hit search, and that lists everybody in your district. And then you can go through here and check whatever, people that you need and add all of them to that group. That can be done for the teacher group as well. So when it comes to these two groups, if you do not have users inside of classroom teacher, then that's the reason your classroom teachers can't see any of the documents on their students when they're in Power Teacher Pro. If you don't have principals, counselors, or any of those other staff in this group right here in special programs, that's why when they're over in SIS, they can't click through to those records, because here's what they should be able to do. And let me leave those changes. I'm going to go back to a student and I'm going to pick on Mickey Mouse because he's my favorite. When I'm inside of Mickey Mouse, there's two things I should be able to do if I've been set up appropriately as an office level person with these permissions. If I am a principal or a counselor who has rights to this student right here, I can either click on here. So do you see that I have an EL icon? I should be able to click here and I should be able to click any of these and it should bring me, I should see exactly what I see inside of here. And if I wanted to look at that IEP on Mickey, again, as a principal, as a counselor, as a whoever, if you've got them in the right group, then this is what they should see. So if you're having trouble with your principals and your counselors or anybody at the school level or even district level not being able to just view these, that means you don't have them in this group right here. And this is the group you want to have them in and not put them in that view only group, because these view only groups here mean something completely different. Okay. This right here is going to, well, this right here is going to give them everything. This right here is going to give them only to their class rosters. So again, if I wanted to know, can my teachers see what they're supposed to see? Let me pop open an incognito window because I can only sign into two different from a different one. So let me pop in as a teacher right quick and show you what your teachers should see if you have it set up correctly. So there's two ways that teachers can get to their students' IEP information or any document information. So I'm going to go here like I'm taking attendance. And when teachers take attendance, notice they see the same icons here. Okay, so here's Mickey again. I, as a teacher, can click the ELL icon. Notice you get that same little box up here. And if I want to look just at Mickey, I can go view document in special programs or pull it up however I need to. And notice here's all of Mickey's documents that I can see as a teacher. If I needed to go into any of these, you can see as a teacher, I can just view every one of these. And if I need to go to any of these, I would be able to see any of that as a teacher. Okay, that's one way teachers can go in. If it's set up correctly, they should be able to go in the same way here. The other thing that teachers can do, because sometimes you don't want to have to go kid by kid in every one of your classes, that same little flyout that we have over in the admin side, teachers have as well over here. They can pop into special programs and they're going to see kind of a class view. So over here in the top right hand corner, they're going to see all of their classes in which they had students who were special program students. So they could be IEP, they could be EL, gifted, RTI 504, any of the markers are going to pop them over here. So here I have 5 classes and how many students are in each of those. So notice in this class, I have 1 student in special programs. In this class, I have 13 students. In this class, I have 4 students. So if I were to click the class that I want to look at, I can see here are my students. Here I would see any of their IEP or 504, whatever. Now y'all remember this is all like test bed data, so you're going to see weird things like why is there a kid who doesn't have any activated profiles? It's just a test bed. But here I could go in and I could see, do I want to look at the profile? Do I want to look at the documents? Teachers have the same amount of view as your special education people do. They just can't edit anything within there. So if you're having trouble with your teachers seeing, it's because of that security group that they're in, because teachers can see just as much as the special education, IEP, 504, RTI, anybody else who's doing the administrative side of it. They just don't get the view access to it. So let's minimize that. So these are 2 groups that highly, highly need to be looked at. All right, I'm going to go back to the main screen of special programs, and I'm going to have to sign back in because I used that incognito a minute ago, which is going to take my rights because of how I'm working in this. So let me sign back in. Let's go back to that security. So I'm going to go to administration, and I'm going to go to security. So right here, you have classroom teacher, you have principals and counselors. If you've not acted upon putting those members in there, please do so because that's going to get them that access. This other group is the transfer notification group. Okay. This is the group that can send and receive the envelopes and possibly get notification in the student transfers notification report. I have some people that say, hey, Stacy, why can't more people send or receive envelopes? Well, guys, the districts make that decision of who can and cannot. Now, this is a very small group. You don't necessarily want everybody being able to send and receive envelopes. So for this right here, most people are not mapping this group to a role over in the SIS to feed into it. They're controlling the membership by this tab right here because it's going to be a very select group. So notice that in my instance right here, these are the only people who would be able to actually move envelopes back and forth and who would be able to see inside of that report. And let me just pop open another tab. The report that I'm referring to is in standard reports. And I believe most people, yep, check and see because I will tell you, depending on who your implementation person was, this report could be somewhere else. It's called the Transferred Student Messages Report. This is the report that you can check that says, hey, yesterday you enrolled Mickey Mouse from Baldwin County Schools and they have active records over there. You might want to ask for an envelope if they haven't already like started sending one to you. So if you've not been getting those messages, that's how you turn that on. You would need to be a part of this group so you can send and receive envelopes and you can get to that actual report to see those students as they're moving. So those three groups have been the three most missed setups to get that to go back and forth. Had a couple of things coming in chat. Let me grab them right quick. If we take the SIS user access role out, then we can manage everything through special programs. Yes, that is absolutely true. And I'll tell you, Wendy, a lot of smaller districts have decided to do that because you're so stretched thin with the amount of people that you have that it's harder for you to go to your tech person to say, hey, I need you to do this. I need you to do that through those roles. You get to make that decision as a district how you want to set this up. So if you want to manage everything through this add members or remove members box on either one of these inside of special programs, you absolutely can simply by coming here and taking out any role that's been mapped. Okay. Now, I will say before y'all go like ripping all those out, please talk with your SIS administrator to make sure that they know that those roles are no longer needed when they're putting in users. Like have that conversation so that y'all can make the best decision for your district together. Paige was wanting to know, why does Mickey not have the IEP icon? Because Paige, even though I had him an IEP in there, I had him marked inactive as a student and his special education status to show something when I'm doing my SIS demonstration. So I purposely set him up as an anomaly to help troubleshoot. And Courtney says, show me again how to disconnect from the SIS. So when I go to administration and security, whatever group it is that you're like, I'm going to stop it from SIS. I want to manage it all inside of special programs. You go to that group. So let's say my EL administrators, let's say that's a small group. Okay. I'm going to click into the name and you're going to get edit properties and privileges. And so where it has ELL administrator, because that's the name of the role over in SIS, if I decide, nope, I do not want to connect this anymore, I'm going to delete that out. I'm going to hit accept. And then at that moment in time, whoever's a member is a member. And if you want to add somebody new, and I'm actually not going to accept that, but if you want to add somebody new or remove somebody, now it is on you as the special programs administrator to come in here and add and remove using this box here and this box here. So let's say that Michelle Lee has left. Michelle Lee has left. She has retired. So I want to remove her. I'm going to hit remove members. It's going to pop me up some check boxes. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to select and I'm going to say, please remove from that group. And now that person is removed. If I don't want this person in here, then I can remove them out. And so you are now controlling the narrative for this security group solely within special programs. If I want to add a new member, so let's say I've got a new personnel, I would come in here, I would search them, and I would add him manually. So yes, you can absolutely add and subtract people here manually, but again, you have to make sure that that is disconnected, because if it's not, then you can add and remove manually all day long. That SIS is going to override it at night when it exports it back in here. Hang on. Kelly said, what is the name of that report again? So Kelly, if you're talking about the transferred students notification report, when you go into standard reports, so reporting standard reports, look under the public general ed student report and you should have a transferred student messages. Now, this is one report that I cannot click on right here because it will show things that of everything that I could scramble. I cannot scramble what was captured at the moment in time we did a data pump from their server. So that would actually show real kids who have stuff that I can't show you. But this right here, and one thing that I do when you go into the setting of any report, so I'm just going to pick another report just to show you. Here was a report that I built this morning in my training. When you click on that report and you're going to have your list of kids, one of the things that I tell everybody is real nice to do is to not publish. Where is it at? If I go to edit and go to report properties, one of the things that you can do, this right here, you can publish it to the SIS admin portal so that if you have access to reports in special programs but also want to run them natively inside of SIS, it can be done. So like if I grab this and say to publish it and accept, let's see how in real time this is. If I go back here in SIS, when you go to system reports, do you notice there's a special, y'all probably have been doing a lot of enterprise reporting. There's actually a special programs tab here that will show you any report over here. So see, there's that one I just published. So if I publish that transfer notification one, I can come in here and click on it from here and it will take me into that report directly. So I can check daily, have I enrolled any student that now says I need to transfer an envelope? There's ways to make some of this show very quickly in different areas when you're inside of special programs. So if you have that report, so again, reporting, standard reports, and it's under public general ed, transferred student messages, you can go over here and publish it over into SIS. You can also publish it to your desktop. Like if you notice, I have some reports up here so that it shows on my home screen so I can see it, because depending on where you work first and most, whether it's on the SIS side or on the special program side, you can get these reports to either of those areas so that you can see what information you have received recently on students. Sarah says school psychometrists and psychologists are missing students that transfer back into their districts. Their reevaluations are becoming past due because they are unaware of them. So this is something I'm actually working with PowerSchool on, and here is what we have figured out. You know that there's this big debate on when a student leaves the district, do you inactivate the record, not just the profile? So let me go into Mickey right here. So does everybody know what I mean when I say the difference in inactivating the profile versus inactivating the record? Like right now, Mickey has two active profiles, a 504 and an EL profile. And I know that we're so used, I know when we first started using special programs, a lot of people, when a student would test out of special education or not be eligible for services, a lot of people were coming here and going deactivate profile. When you do that, you are deactivating every profile inside of special programs, which is not what you want to do natively, because they might be a non-special education student because you had them in referring and testing, but they are an EL student. And when you take them out this way, you take them out of everything. This really only needs to be used if a student withdraws from your district, withdraws, graduates, one or the other, because that will get them off. Now, right now, we don't want to withdraw them out or deactivate this profile to the end of the year because they stop showing up on some of the state reports. This is one of the reasons I have to talk to PowerSchool about this, because we need this to work a little bit more efficiently. So we tell people don't deactivate until the end of the year. However, to Sarah's question, when you have a student that leaves your district, goes somewhere else and comes back, you will not get an alert on that transferred students report that they're back if they still have an active record. It only alerts you when they're inactive. So I'm trying to fix that in another way. So I'll give you a heads up on something I have one of my report developers working on. And it came out of a request from the homeless liaisons in the state. I'm working to see if there is a way to build an alert in SIS that upon enrollment, you can be notified in the SIS without having to look at the flag in special programs that you just enrolled a student that had one of the flags from their other district. Because believe it or not, when you are in SIS, let me go to Mickey's record. This state province page has a special programs tab on it. And all of this information right here is being pumped over from special programs. Like when it does that export at night, it brings everything to this page right here. When a kid transfers from one district to the next, this page picks up and goes with them. So what I'm trying to do to help alleviate that in-district thing for everyone across the state is get a plugin written that will look for active statuses here and give you a nice big warning up here that says, hey, within the last 7 days, XYC student has enrolled and they have a whatever flag set. So I'm working on a solution for that so that we don't have to get in this big, do I deactivate or not here, and us end up messing some of our state reports up for end of the year. Christy Jackson says, how do we find the transfer notifications report under reports? So Christy, again, under configure, oops, go back, reporting, standard reports. It should be listed under the public general ed students report. So if you have access to that list, you have the transferred student messages report. But what if you're saying, okay, I don't even have access to this overall list right here? All right, let me log back in, because y'all know every time I swap back and forth between these users, it knocks you out of this super admin. So I have to go back into it a few times when I'm doing these demos. Oops. So let me show you kind of how you can set the security of those reports up. So if I go to standard reports, and this could be for any of these reports that were pushed down natively from PowerSchool. So let's say I have this report, and I'm going to go back to this one right here that I developed. Any of them inside of here. When you go to edit report, if you have the access to edit, there is this security tab in it. And you get to decide which security groups do you want to allow to have access to this report. Now, I will tell you, it's going to base it on which security groups have access in other areas to the documents and profiles are going to be what's listed right here. So you can see right here, I have these security groups on here currently. If I go back to a different report, so let me finish editing and go back to my list of reports. Let's pull the integration IDT report. Okay. If I go to this edit report and go into security, you'll notice I have way more security groups right here where I can go on and say yes, because natively I gave the profile pieces to this report access, and we're going to talk about documents and security in a minute. These are all who show up, but if I'm like, I also want, let's just say you want counselors, principals to know if somebody's got an integration error. You can then change and say, all right, you're able to see that report. That's what's going to turn reports here on and off for your different subgroups within special programs. So reports have security. Profiles have security. Documents have security. So let's go down that rabbit hole next. When you're under administration and you're under configuration, there are the document templates. Now, when you're logged in as the super secret admin password, you're going to see every document that is available to be issued inside of special programs. Do you notice there's a ton of them? Now, depending on your rights, if you're not logged in with super secret admin password, you might only see a few, or you might only see the ones that, you know, are available to whatever subgroup that you have. This right here, and let me pop open another tab. When you're on a student, what you have access to is what controls what's available in this drop down list so that you can actually assign it to students. Okay. So if I come back to this document template, within each one of these documents inside of here, there's a little lock icon. And this little lock icon says, hey, this is where you can map each one of those groups that we just saw in security to these documents. So for example, if you missed the training this morning, there is a video out there, but I talked about this ACAP testing supports form because it was new. And this is what you have to do every time the state releases a new document inside of special programs. You've got to come over here to this lock and you've got to decide who gets access to do all of these different things. You have view, create, edit, delete, set it, whatever. For those of you who haven't been on WebExes with me before, there's a certain minute mark where my WebExes just blip out. So you should all be back with me now. But when you first turn on a document, all of this is blank and nobody has access to it. That's why you have to use that super secret admin password to get in here to even know that it's there. But then you see this filter by category. You have to go in and decide which all groups need to touch this document right here. So for example, this ACAP testing supports form. Well, if a student has an IEP, a 504, or an IELP, we fill out this accommodations and accessibility form for them. So who are the people who touch your IEP students, your 504 students, and your IELP students? Well, that's probably going to be users in the EL group. So I would need to go here and decide, do the administrators, do the teachers, who needs to touch this form? The special education group, the 504 group, who needs to touch this form? But the one group that gets left off a lot, because I get emails, even special ed get the emails that say, hey, teachers and counselors can't see the same documents that I can see. Well, have you turned this document on so they can view it? So if I come down here again to my building level staff, have you said classroom teachers and principals can view these documents? Because if you've not gone in and turned it on for them, so they're setting up security and then they're setting up security within the document to know can they actually view it, because it might be that they can get into special programs, but if you've not given them access to see specific types of documents, then they'll see partial list, not all of the list. So you've got to make sure that you've looked at each one of these to see who has been given what inside of here. All right, a couple of more questions come in. I'm going to try to jump through chat. Kathy goes back. If the transfer envelope security group is not visible in admin, how can I get it back? The chat help removed it during one of my sessions and I haven't been able to get the groups. So it makes me wonder if you can't see it with the admin session that they probably deleted the report altogether. If you'll just put in a PowerSchool support ticket, they can put that report back in there with you, or we can work at doing an extract and go from one to the other if you want to do it offline, Kathy. All right, Teresa asked, so if students are marked inactive in special education, why does it inactivate them for EL? So let's go back to the main screen. If I go to Mickey, I'm going to go into his profile. It depends on how they were inactivated, Teresa, because let's say that Mickey is a student who was in for referral for special ed services, but we already knew he was an EL student from the get-go. Okay, he's going to have these different profiles. So inactivating a special education profile is not you being on this student demographics and deactivating the profile here, because that takes them out of everything. What you want to do when you're in your pod of data, let's say, if you're the special ed person and you only just want to say, okay, he no longer qualifies for special ed services, or maybe he's special ed and he's no longer qualifying for EL services. Whatever services group you're in, and you're like, okay, we need to take him out because he no longer qualifies, you need to come up here to these profiles. You need to find the appropriate profile, be it RTI, 504, EL, whatever it is, and on that profile, you need to put all the exit information and make sure that he is no longer in an active status. But do not come up here and go deactivate profile, because that deactivates the overall profile. That is only used in very certain circumstances, when kids graduated, when kids no longer receiving services at all, withdrawn, things like that. So that's why you have to be very careful about this. Do not do the deactivation here. Your deactivation comes from you coming into the profile and indating all of the program and making sure that they are no longer in that active status. So if I'm in special education, you're coming in here, you're indating everything, changing dates on IEPs. If you have to, you can come in here to the profile and inactivate here. But that is, most of your other documents will feed this, so you would amend that IEP or whatever you need to do to get that status to be inactive here, but not do an inactivation up here. Corey said, can you remind us to the advantages or disadvantages of mapping to SIS? To be honest with you, Corey, it is all about how many people you have in the district who can help with this. There really is no advantage one way or another, unless you're wanting to put, everything on this one person who administrates your SIS is also going to be your special programs coordinator. Then yeah, it's probably easier on them to do as much in SIS as possible, because that's where they live the majority of their life. They're probably not dealing with the documents and actually attaching them to students. So if you're lucky enough to have a person that all they do is administer PowerSchool altogether in all the security setup and settings, that would be your advantage to it. A lot of time when there's this division of services within a district, it's hard to have to wait on somebody else to do something before you can do something. And so if you don't want to have to do that waiting game and you're like, we want to handle it here, then that's when you would want to do a disconnect with it. Paige, so just double checking what you said about the transfer student messages. To get those messages, the person must have the ability to send and receive the envelopes. Yes, that all kind of ties in there together on that page. Rita asks, if a PSys user access role under edit properly only has counselor in the box, does this mapping still apply to principals? So if it only has counselor, then that means when you're over here in SIS, then that person would have to have that counselor role, even if they're not a counselor. And you want to be very careful with that, because if you put counselor up under a principal here, it could give them access to things you might not want a principal to have access to. So I discourage you from having a role mapping that you try to put on more than one group inside of SIS. You either need to disconnect it, or you need to create a whole new group that says principal/counselors, however you want to do it. If you remove SIS mapping, staff would be able to fly in, go to special programs with no change. Correct. They absolutely could. Because I'm not mapped, like my user access role is not mapped through here. So you saw how I was able to go in and fly, and I didn't, in my setup, I don't have teachers mapped. Like I manually controlled the teachers through that add and remove in my setting right here, and you're able to fly with no problem. Tammy, the transfer messages report has some flaws. Date enrolled is not the date enrolled in your school this year. It's the date they started any school in Alabama this year. That's correct. It includes students that may have enrolled last year, includes students that are inactive. So yeah, remember, Tammy, that those are moment in time. So depending on when the kid had an activated status, it's going to be that. It's not going to be your most current one because you haven't pulled that record in there yet. So it's looking out in the state locator, not what's natively in your SIS, if that makes sense. So you're expecting to see some discrepancies there. It'll all sync back up once it gets in there and adjust with whatever you have inside of your SIS to that record. Dina asks, is there a way to mass remove the 504 special ed view only security group for those who are already tied to a building staff teacher group? Those were set up early after the integration. Yes, Dina. So if you're doing it from the SIS side, you can mass assign. Trying to think if you can mass remove. I don't think you can, but Dina, let me look into that. And if so, I will let you know. But from what I remember, you cannot mass remove those on SIS. You can, because I'll be honest with you, I see very few cases of using those view rights for these groups. Like let me cancel out this. For what I know we do in Alabama, these view only groups, I mean, our view only, our principals and counselors and stuff are going to be inside of that. People who need to see everything. The only time you would do this is if you had a person who only needed to view everybody in the school or everybody in a district. And at that point, we don't have those that don't go here. If you come up with a case and you think you need it, you can do it. But I would disconnect this and just manually go in here and do a mass remove of everybody through the members group. If you truly do, that might be your easiest thing to do right now, Dina. So yes, Tammy, any report is going to include graduated students if the students' profiles have not been inactivated. So one of your cleanup things that I would say you would do each year, when we do end of year rollover and it graduates all the students, and everybody knows that third Friday in June is the date we do our state collections. Once all the state collections are done, as part of a to-do list, is to go into your graduates and go and actually do the inactivate profile, because while profiles are active, they will continue to show up on some reports. So you kind of have to keep that in mind. Oh, I'm getting down to where y'all said that about the flag. Yes, I thought that y'all would like getting some kind of alert that actually works on those transferring of students, especially those that are in district. Will the state be launching a digital signature feature? I will say that is something that we've kind of had some conversations about. There will have to be like a model redo, because right now none of the documents are set up to accept digital signatures, but it's something we are actively having conversations about. Gotcha, Charlotte, about the plugins. Courtney, how do we get notified of updates like this new report? Is it in your Monday update? Yes. So on that Monday newsletter that I send out, that is how, like, I blast it out to everyone that, hey, there's a new document here. Because typically every time a new document comes out, I'll film a little YouTube video that shows how to go in, activate this new document for everyone, and go through it. Because if you were to go to the YouTube channel right now, you'd see a video that shows you how to turn on that ACAP support form for your users. So I kind of give all that information in there. Yep, that's where my sign went out. Veronica asks, is it possible to grant access to teachers so they only see the documents that are sent to them? We want to share live IEPs with classroom teachers, but it's my understanding that if you grant access to IEP documents, you're granting all IEPs so they'll be able to see IEPs for every child in their school. No, that is not correct. So that's where that view is misunderstood, Veronica. If you have them in the classroom teacher group, then they can only see IEPs for the students in their classrooms. But if you have them in this, let me come down here, special ed viewer group, that is allowing them to see IEPs on any student in the school, which is what you don't want. And I can tell you, I know 100% for a fact, some districts in implementation were set up incorrectly, and they assign teachers this group right here. If you have teachers in this group right here, write this down. Get your pad, write it down, take them out now. That needs to go because that is giving them access to everybody. You want to make sure your teachers are in this classroom teacher group here. Sarah's asking, what kind of access should school psychometrists or psychologists have? Well, that all depends on what they're going to be doing. So that could differ school by school. If anybody has a psychometrist that you just want to have a conversation about, feel free to give me an email, give me a call. We can talk through that if you want to, so that we can see what would be best beneficial for your district. Can you go back to where to turn on a new released form? Absolutely. So administration, configuration. Up here is document templates. When a new form is released, your person who's over all of special programs, who has the super secret admin password, has to come to document templates. They have to come find the form down here. So do y'all see all these forms? I bet some of these forms hadn't even been turned on for some of you. When they get that form, so here's that new form, find the security lock. And then you'll come through here and look at the different groups to see who has what security for them. Now, another way, let's see if I can remember this off the top of my head. If I go into security and go into, let's go into special education teachers, for example. I can go into special education teacher. Do you see how when I'm also under this, I have this document templates right here? If I click on this, I can see all of the documents my special ed teachers have been given access to. So you can look at security in a couple of ways. This just kind of lets you go in and see it. And if I click into it, I can get to the edit buttons where I can do it from here. But you can look at any group holistically across all documents. So here's what I would say do. Go to that staff security group. So let's start over. Go to the staff security group of teachers. And then go to document templates. What have you given your teachers access to view? So you see this shows me everything they do have so that you can figure out what they don't have. That way you can then go to the document and turn it on for them. Once they have access, you can edit it from here, but you need to get them access over in that document area under configuration. Paige says, what was that June date again? So the third Friday of June is when a lot of the state collection snapshots are done. That's June 16th this year. All right, Kyle asked, why does the parent's contact information disappear overnight after it's been added to special programs? I add the parent's name and check the receives box, but sometimes it will not be there the next day for the teacher to add. So there's two parts to this, Kyle. So let's go back into here and let me go to Mickey Mouse. So when you go and check your contacts, so I'm going to do contacts here and let it load. And I'm going to click into myself as a contact for Mickey Mouse. Everybody knows the receives mailing flag is like that big trigger, but there's a second trigger, and it's this checkbox right here. Contacts can have an active or an inactive status. I will tell you right now, across the entire state of Alabama, there are a ton of registrars, enrollment clerks, data clerks who are going in and consolidating duplicate contacts on students. You know, that was something we chased tonight now. Same thing we're chasing here. Sometimes records are consolidated and the record that was active was consolidated into the record that was inactive, and nobody ever catches that this didn't get checked back. So you've gone in and you had parents who were showing up, you've done received mailing, and somehow they've gotten flipped to an inactive status. So two things I want you to check. If you have a parent that does not show up or they disappear over there in that guardian area on your documents, you're right, check. Do they actually have receives mailing? So right here, if I go for Mickey, you can see, yep, I've checked receives mailing, but am I also active? Because if you're inactive, it's going to take that off when it goes over there. So double check that. Oh, thank you. Somebody just said a very sweet note saying they appreciate this. Kyle said, should I only do this on the SIS side? Yes, because if you try to change anything within the profiles here on the contacts, so if I go to Mickey and I try to, change anything on any of this demographic information, all it's going to do is just overwrite in the SIS. So any of the changes that you want to make in this demographic area, always trigger them for the SIS side and let them refresh over in there. And I will tell you, a lot of people have asked about those refreshes back and forth. So you have the refreshes and you have exports. So things that come in from SIS over here, this is where it gets really squirrely, y'all. So bear with me on this. We like to think of it as an overnight process. Like every 24 hours, this data should update, but that actually is not what happens. Okay. There's groups of LEAs districts that are on this cycle. So let's say these 10 districts are roped together. The way PowerSchool's imports and exports work is it starts with whatever district is in first in this group of, let's say, 10, and it goes through and it cycles their imports, and then it moves to the next district and it cycles theirs, and it moves to the next one and it cycles theirs. If something happens, let's say something goes squirrely in district number 3, it could delay the rest of those before it goes to the next group. So sometimes it's every 24 hours, sometimes it's shorter than 24 hours, sometimes it's longer than 24 hours, depending on how that integration works. But at least every 24 hours, you should see this data update here. Now, one of the things that you can do is push data back from a profile and special programs over to the SIS instantly. So let's say that I'm working on this student's EL profile. And I do come in here and this student has moved from a year 2 to a exited first year monitoring. Okay. And I accept changes. I can then come in here and go back to the student demographics. And I get this option to refresh the profile to and from the student information system. So when I was in Mickey, if I go back to the special programs tab, notice, federal programs tab. Let's go here to see the EL stuff. You can barely see it in gray, but it says exiting first year monitoring. I can push any changes made back and forth through that refresh. I can click that, let it spin, and I'm going to get this notice pop up down here that it's been refreshed, and then I can come back here. I can refresh this screen, and it's going to go to whatever I did. Sometimes it's more instantaneous if I catch it in there, but a lot of times, especially at state reporting time, you can go in and refresh that to move it back into the SIS a lot quicker, but you do have to wait for that overnight for any changes in SIS to come in. Same thing with enrollments and things such as that. You want to give time for whatever happens on SIS to make its way to special programs. Michelle says, can you help me one more time with where to find that on this SIS side? Oh, refresh me, Michelle. What are we looking at? Oh, the contacts. So when you are on the I'm gonna leave that. So if I go back to the student record, so I just pulled Mickey up under information with contacts. Let it spin and pull up. Here's all the contacts for Mickey Mouse. So here I am. I'm going to click into that record. And right down here at the top of the page under employer area, you have this active and inactive checkbox. You want to make sure they're checked active because only those active ones are going to go over there. So hopefully that helps. Well, guys, I know we are 11 minutes over on our hour mark. I'm going to stop the recording real quick.